And we're live. Hello, everyone. Hi, Flo. Hi, Kemp. Thank you for joining. For anyone who hasn't seen my face today, my name is Jay, and I'm a DevRel engineer over here at Midnight. I'm excited to meet with you all and to bring on two special guests, as you can see here today. Our guests are Kemp from AR.io and Flo from NMaker. Can you both introduce yourselves and the teams that you represent? Let's start over with Flo.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Flo from NMaker. I work with NMaker since 2 years. And yeah, NMaker is an infrastructure provider or full service platform for minting NFTs, so to create your tokens.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro. And it's been awesome working with you over the past few weeks, discussing NFTs, the potential for the future on Midnight. So it's great to bring you on the call. And now I'd like to pass it over to Kemp. Can you introduce yourself and AR.io?
Thanks, man, and thanks for inviting me up. Yeah, I'm Kemp. So I've been in the crypto space for a little while. My first job in the space was helping to set up and run Developer DAO. So I think someone on maybe yourself, but definitely Idris from your DevRel team is a member. I know him well. He's a cool dude. And I now work as head of ecosystem at AR.io. So AR.io stands for Arweave In and Out, but we call it the first permanent cloud network. And the shortest way to describe it is we run most of the infrastructure for uploading and downloading data to Arweave, and then the network is an effort to decentralize that whole stack of like storage, indexing, and access.
Nice. Thank you for that intro. I've been looking into a bunch of your tools as developers are asking me, how do I manage my data? So I figured I'd bring you both onto stage because you represent different parts of the stack that deal with off-chain storage. So anyone who starts building with blockchains quickly realizes that chains are limited in storage, and it becomes a challenge when people are building dApps that are storage heavy, things like photo albums, medical records, or social media platforms. So AR.io provides a solution for the storage problem. Kemp, can you tell the audience about the relationship? Well, you kind of went over between AR.io and Arweave. Can you tell us what tools are available to get your stuff onto Arweave and how we can use AR.io?
Absolutely, mate. So yeah, that like blockchains are not really normally designed to store like large arbitrary amounts of data, right? It's not what they were originally designed for. So Arweave's been around about 8 years. It was kind of one of the first attempts at a data chain, and it's got that really nice Lindy of being around for a long time. But it focuses on one thing really, and that is storing data for a very long time. So in the same way that like Bitcoin is the simplest manifestation and the first of a blockchain, you can kind of think about Arweave as the same kind of like focus, but for data, right? You pay Arweave upfront one-time fee, and the blockchain just focuses on storing that data for a very, very long time. And we can go into a quick overview of how that works if you want. But our team have been working in the Arweave ecosystem for a long time. They originally built Rdrive, which I think you've been using, right? Which is like, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I've been testing it out to upload files and stuff, yeah.
Nice. So for anyone who hasn't used it, rdrive.io, it's like a Dropbox-like app for storing data on Arweave. You log in with your wallet and you get this nice kind of like familiar experience, which is great for kind of end users, and creators use it a lot as well. But then we also built Turbo, which is a high availability upload service. This basically takes lots and lots of data and packs it into transactions and puts it on Arweave. And it handles it allows you to pay in different tokens and gives you some assurances around availability and finalization. That handles about like 90% of the traffic for Arweave, the upload traffic. And then we also run Arweave.net, which if you've used Arweave is like the main gateway that everyone goes to, right? You're looking at NFT, it says Arweave.net/transaction hash. And we operate that too in partnership with the Arweave core team. And this is all great and it all works at scale, and people still use this a lot, mostly to be honest. But the network is an effort to take everything that we've learned from that stack and decentralize it, right? So we have like an open source gateway node that anyone can run. You can even run an upload service alongside it if you want. But still mostly the interface for developers, because running an upload service at scale is difficult. Most developers still will use Turbo, which is a hosted service, and then sort of certain teams that want to take more ownership of their stack will go into sort of running their own gateway. And I can kind of like bring up the website and show folks if you want, but that's maybe like the quickest summary I can give of what is like quite a few different moving parts.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary, and understanding that, of course, all the traffic is going through Turbo, the SDKs and the tools you have available. But one thing that we've been talking to a lot of developers about, and they keep asking questions about, is how can I store something on a decentralized, data storage, but not necessarily reveal the content itself? And we kind of briefly touched on how to have some of that data private. And even when I was working with Arweave, there was a feature for you to upload content privately without sharing it. Can you touch on your privacy features there?
100%. So Arweave as a storage layer, it tries not to solve too many problems, right? And I think when you're building protocols, you have like a thin and fat protocol thesis, and the more problems you try and solve in one protocol, the less efficient it becomes at solving the thing that it really wants to solve. So Arweave does not solve for encryption, decryption. It certainly doesn't solve for like access control. So when we were building Arweave, we had people who wanted a solution for this. So we created something called Arweave File System, which is what sits behind Arweave and gives you the like Google Drive or Dropbox like folder structure type experience that you get when you use it. And within RFS, Arweave File System, an individual user can encrypt their own access, their own data, and make it private, and then be able to view their own data, which is cool when it works for like you, Jay, you want private data, or you, Florian, you want private data, but you can't share that, right? If I give either of you my key, like you've got my key, so like you can do whatever you want. So, and the same kind of applies broadly to Arweave. Like you can store encrypted data that like you can store whatever you want, but it doesn't try and solve for that access problem. So I think that's why it's really interesting in the Midnight space is like how these two things can maybe come together, where it's like the permanent storage can be provided by Arweave, and then I know there's solutions in the Midnight ecosystem for handling privacy, and I think that unlocks some really interesting possibilities.
And it's great because as we're talking through solutions in the Discord and meeting with different developers, they arrive at the same conclusion, right? Is I have to in some way encrypt the data, put it on there, and then either decrypt it, kind of either one way, two way. But then we realize, hey, if someone finds my key, then the entire platform is kind of compromised, right? So we're still talking through those solutions. It's going to be great to have you in the community, to help us work with those solutions. And we're talking through it as a team, but also with, indie developers. Now, Flo, as a builder in the space, you build platforms, consumer-facing applications. What's your first impression of AR.io, if you have one? And I wanted to hear your feedback mostly because your stack is built on IPFS, as far as I know, right?
Yeah, it's all built on IPFS. We have also integrated iGun. But yeah, I really like the privacy layer. What you have here, right? So that's pretty cool, and that's something IPFS doesn't offer. So I'd be happy to have that integrated or to work with Arweave for sure.
Nice. I actually wrote a guide earlier about how to use Turbo for storing NFTs. It's not published yet. It's sitting waiting to be merged. So once that's merged, I can send it over to you. But yeah, if you're using IPFS for NFT storage, ultimately all you change out to store on Arweave is just the way you upload the data, and then you just get a different kind of hash back, right? So I'd love to chat with you about if you're interested in looking at that, because it should hopefully be quite an easy one. But I'm the guy that can like write checks that might not be able to be filled by the engineering team too easily.
So manually it's already pretty easy because you only exchange the link in the metadata. So the NFT pulls up the link, and so you can just exchange from IPFS to Arweave. But yeah, to integrate it, that you have it as a drop down, that would be cool, I think.
Yeah, I think it's good to give people. I think it's good to give people choice, right? Like I like IPFS; it's good tech. You have this like tribalism in crypto, right? Where it's you have like the IPFS and Pinata guys over here, and the Arweave guys over here. But we don't really play that game. We think it's good technology, but we'd love to kind of support you guys to get that integrated if you think it's of interest to your users.
Yeah, I'll definitely connect you two after the call. Kemp, thank you for saying that the docs weren't published, because I was thinking about sharing that. So thank you for pointing that out. I'm looking at that for my own kind of dApps as I build out too. So thanks for the resources.
You're welcome. The docs are published, but this NFT guide probably will come later today or tomorrow.
Okay, cool. So let us know. We'll share it with the community as soon as it's available. Get it out there, have people test it, and provide some feedback.
Awesome.
Now, during your kind of intro, you mentioned that the biggest use is your Turbo kind of SDK, right? People are uploading a lot of content, but what are these NFTs? What's the content, if you have context? Because a lot of our dApp developers may be new. They're coming into our community, looking at proposals, and they're asking, what should I build? So I think the best way to get them an idea of what to build is to understand what is the highest demand that is going through your platform. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. And I think it might make sense to share my screen real quick just to make sure I'm communicating the difference a little bit. So this is our website, ar.io. Big shout out to Phil, our founder, for picking up that domain a long time ago. So as you can see, we call ourselves the first permanent cloud network, and I've kind of explained what we do. And when you get on the website, you kind of have two options, right? You have the hosted solution or the join the network. So hosted solution is Turbo. And what Turbo is all of the stuff that I've been talking about bundled into like a high availability cloud service that you can just plug in and go. So it will upload data, it will index it, and then it will make it available from gateways in the network, including Arweave.net. So when it comes to use cases, NFTs was like maybe the first use case that Arweave was used for at scale. And that was actually, Florian, you might find this interesting. That was Metaplex was like the first big user of Arweave for NFTs. So for anyone who doesn't know, Metaplex is similar to, I think, Florian, to NMKR. And it was like a platform that's used to create tokens and NFTs in the Solana ecosystem. So they integrated Arweave in order to store NFT images and NFT metadata, because they couldn't store it on their blockchain because it takes up too much space. But over the years, the use cases for Arweave have kind of mushroomed out. So we have this like concept of the perma web. So if you see this domain, if I go to our docs website, you see the domain here is, maybe I can zoom in, maybe that'll help. Nope. So you see docs.ar.io. So this is our docs website. And the reason I'm showing, like, it's a really good resource for you to go and have a look. You can sort of figure out how to upload and download, and we've got guides and all sorts in here. So the NFT guide we're talking about will be here later, Jay. But the reason I was bringing this up is because what we can do is we can go to ar.arweave.net, and you'll see exactly the same website. So you kind of have this like decentralized internet where I can deploy a website on Arweave, give it a Arweave name system name, and then access that as a subdomain of all gateways in the network. So you get this, like, lots of people have seen IPFS and EtherLimo, which again, awesome tech. We work with those guys, we love them. But you kind of have this forever problem in building dApps where the front end hosting isn't decentralized, and that is what this solves. So that's another area of it, which is really important for like avoiding broken links and 404s on the web. And this applies to NFTs as well, right? Like if your link in your NFT goes down, your NFT is probably not worth a huge amount anymore. But the use cases go way beyond that. So you have like Redstone oracles will store oracle data on Arweave, and they do that so they have like an immutable audit trail. dBridge and across protocols store their bridging data on Arweave, so you can like validate what happened. We have some AI teams doing some quite interesting stuff, like storing versions of models and proofs of model weights and training data. So you can kind of build whatever you want with it. I think the most important thing with Arweave is permanent. So if your use case warrants permanent data, then it's a really good option. But you do need to think carefully about how you architect your systems up front, because it's permanent. You can't change it, right? So you can build like cool data structures that grow over time and are really, really useful. You just have to think a little bit more upfront, but it can be applied to like kind of many different sectors.
Yeah, well, that was interesting too. While I was going through your docs and stuff and looking at, you know, the hyperlinks, I've always thought that maybe you can verify that like a company is using a particular API so that you know that their data is coming from a legitimate source or something like that. And then the AI and the storage space, there's a ton there that I'd love to like introduce you to some developers. But you
Yeah,
were gonna
we'd
say
love that. There's this like verifiability story in AI, right? Like once you sign a data item and send it to Turbo, we can't touch that, and it will settle on chain, and then you can verify that the data you get back is what was originally put there. So in AI, you get this like really cool verifiability story. So yeah, man, anyone in any of those spaces, we're super interested to kind of chat to and nerd out on their ideas and kind of see what we can dream up.
I can definitely introduce you to some of our AI developers. One question I had as I'm looking through kind of the decentralized links, things like that, is do you have a name service or is it just the links?
Yeah, so it's a name service. It's called Arweave name service. So maybe if I'll share my screen again. Sorry, I know we're bouncing around a little bit, but
It's fine.
Oh,
I'm mostly asking because to me, when I first heard of like name services and stuff, I was fascinated by this idea that it's a web link, but then at the same time, I could send funds to people with the same kind of like name service name. I feel like there's something there that people haven't really tapped into. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and like there is that. So I don't know how much you know about the Arweave ecosystem, but our smart contracts live on a smart contract platform called AO, which is like a kind of a different model for blockchains. But in the same way that you can use ENS to send money to someone's name on Ethereum or EVM networks, on AO you can use your Arweave name system name. So the same one that you can host a website on, I can send money to you and me, right? But I think one of the coolest use cases, which we're starting to see more adoption of now, is using the name system as a decentralized API. So you can point the name at any data on Arweave, right? It doesn't have to be a website. It can be whatever you want. So as you build data structures on Arweave, and you then create like a manifest file for that data structure, which explains and points to where the data is, you then associate that manifest with the name, and you get this like unruggable permanent API because you go to like the name dot any of the 600 gateways in the network. So you can create these like crazy permanent unruggable data sets that anyone can access in the same way you can access an API.
That is interesting. I feel like I have to take some time to digest that and like think about use cases and stuff.
Yeah, I worked here for a year, and it's only really like clicking for me now. I think it's cool, but hopefully we'll have more to share on like examples soon.
Awesome. Thanks for going through that. So as people are developing their solutions and they want to use AR.io, what are some considerations that they need to have? Maybe things like cost. Like I know when I started to use the platform, I was using AR Drive. I uploaded my first piece of content. It was like, hey, you like the service. Now you got to start paying for, you know, the extra service. So yeah, what are some considerations, whether it's cost, latency, things that builders should keep in mind as they're developing their solutions?
Yeah, that's a super good question. So we are promising a long-term storage, right? So there is a cost trade-off for that. So in the same way of like talking with Florian earlier about like sometimes some data is ephemeral, it doesn't necessarily need to be stored for long term. Arweave is more expensive at the moment. I think it's hovering around about maybe like $15 a gigabyte. But for that, you get like 200 plus years of storage, right? So it's kind of, you need to think about it. And that's what I meant earlier about the design decision of like its permanence. You need to think about the architecture a little bit differently. The same as with price, right? If the thing doesn't need to be permanent, then the Arweave is maybe not necessarily the right storage layer. And then some other considerations around like latency. So originally with Arweave, when you were uploading transactions, you'd have to wait a long time for the data to settle on chain and then become available from a gateway.
Yeah.
So Turbo has solved that problem. So as soon as you get like a 200 response back from Turbo, you'll be able to access the transaction from arweave.net. So that's cool. And arweave.net does provide quite a high level of free access. So most people can kind of just hammer arweave.net and they'll be fine. But if you really had a big use case and you had big SLAs for like egress and like serving data to people, and you wanted to take control of that quality of service, then we would advise either like operate your own gateway, and we can help you do that. It's a really nice modular stack. I can run it, and I'm like not really a dev. And you can optimize it to like index and serve your own data. But for most use cases, you don't necessarily need to do that. So I'd say they're maybe like the main concerns is like think carefully about what you're storing because it's permanent, and then kind of price similar into that conversation. And then also like how and who is going to be accessing that data and what are the requirements. Like most use cases, if you use Turbo and Arweave.net, you're fine. But in some like large enterprise use cases, you might want to take ownership of that quality of service, and you might want to think a bit more carefully. And I can chat to you about that, about like the access patterns for data, because that will like dictate how you store up front. And because it's permanent, if you get it wrong, it can cause some challenges for you. But I love nerding out about this stuff. So if anyone wants to kind of like try and figure it out, just give me a shout and I'll happily jump on a call.
Awesome. I'll definitely be reaching out to you for more info, going back and forth on this. So devs have heard what is AR.io. They kind of have a basic understanding of it. How do they get started? What's the best way?
Go straight to our docs, really. Within our docs, we'll give you guides for both using Turbo and kind of like doing what you need to in the network if you want to run your own gateway. But if you're familiar with like Pinata or anything in the IPFS world, or even like S3, like it's not that different to like just plug into Turbo. So I'd say, yeah, go have a look at the docs. We have some pretty good guides and examples in there for storing websites, storing NFTs soon, storing deep in data, like all sorts of stuff that you can have a look at. And make sure to jump into our Discord as well. The team are pretty good for support.
Nice. Thank you. That was awesome. I'm super excited to look into the tech, test everything out. We've been going back and forth, so I'm excited to continue that. Now I'd like to switch gears a bit and start covering NMKR and Flow. So just to reiterate, Flo, can you go over again, what is NMKR and why should people check it out?
So yeah, let me share my screen already real quick. I show our web page. And yeah, NMKR is an infrastructure provider and kind of full service platform that enables creators and brands and businesses and also developers to create and launch their NFTs and also to manage them. Yeah, and with that, one can, for example, create their own real-world assets with just minimal friction. So this is our landing page here. And with getting started, you will come to our studio.nmaker.io. And with that, it's a pretty easy user interface. You can
Hey,
on your
Flo,
dashboard.
can you make your
Yes?
screen a bit bigger? It's a little hard to see on my end.
How can I do that?
I think if you just zoom into your browser. Yeah, Control Plus.
Here we go.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, here's the NMKR Studio. You have your dashboard here, NFT minting, auctions, whatsoever. You set up basically your account here. You set up operational wallets, what you need to get royalties on your sales, for example. And then here you can create a project, use a template from us, or you can discover the API here. We have all our NMKR Studio also as an API. And yeah, here you can buy mint coupons. That's for minting the NFTs. As there are some transaction fees and stuff, we cover that with mint coupons if you want to buy them from with fiat, for example. And yeah, then from here you go to NFT minting. You can I have a lot of example or testing projects here, but in a blank space you create a new project. You can select your blockchain you want to use. I just select Cardano for now, type in something here, and then you can here select the, give me a second. Here is the storage provider, I'm sorry. And here at the moment we have IPFS and Iagon, but it would be cool to integrate others as well, for sure.
Maybe soon,
And
maybe soon.
Maybe soon, maybe soon. And then when we've created the project, it's here, and from there you can set up everything like what you want. You can manage your project, you can set up NFT prices, you can give discounts on your NFT whatsoever you want. And I click on another project. Once you've created the token, you can also see the metadata here, and that's the SIP25 standard. That's for Cardano, the metadata standard for a Cardano token. And here on the image storage, for example, you see the IPFS hash or the IPFS link. You can just easily replace that with any other you have, also with web links. And so you can basically feed the metadata of your NFT with the images or the subfiles you want. Yeah, and we also have that all covered in our docs, just to keep that short. So this is basically a rundown, follow along guide, introduction about NMaker, and then here in NMaker Studio it starts how to quick start, how to set everything up. You can follow along here and also use the search engine. And if you're looking for the API, we have that also covered in our docs, but that's the Swagger from NMaker Studio, and you'll find all the endpoints also here, like creating customers, getting customer info, NFTs, delete NFTs, set up NFTs, all the tools, and so on.
I see a question in the audience. Are there any whitelist abilities on your platform?
Yes, it is when you have the project set up, you can go here and manage projects, and you go to sales conditions. And then you can add several sales conditions, like buyer must have one or more NFTs. So this is kind of, yeah, whitelisted addresses here. You can choose this, and then you can just upload addresses via CSV file, and then you have the whitelist.
Awesome. Now, thanks for sharing that. It's a really cool platform. I've been testing it out for some of my other projects. But I wanted to bring you onto the stage today because we were covering kind of data storage, from the providers, and then you built a platform that's easier to use if I want to just come in here, mint some NFTs, upload maybe an image, upload my metadata, and then press mint. So I wanted to show our developers like what is the core infrastructure and what are tools that they can build on top of it. So I'd like for you to share your experience kind of as a developer. What were some of the biggest challenges you ran into NMaker with NFTs and creating this?
So to be honest with you, I'm not a developer, and as I said, I only joined like 2 years ago in the NMaker team. So I cannot really answer about what the challenges were in building the NMaker tool. Yeah, so the only challenge I have now at the moment with a lot of clients, so to say, they really need the privacy aspect on NFTs. They're really craving for that. We have a lot of inquiries now since we're building with Midnight, and we're really waiting on that to integrate Midnight as another blockchain to have this privacy layer on NFTs.
Interesting. So now that you've been talking with different developers, potential clients, what are the areas you see the most interest in? Kemp touched on some AI stuff, maybe some Oracle stuff. What are you seeing on your end that has most demand for your platform?
Yeah, sure. AI stuff is a thing at the moment. Absolute, yeah. But what I see from NFT perspective is clearly real world asset tokenization. So storing gold in tokens, storing real value in tokens, and being able to trade that 24/7, 365 on the market without anyone in between. And yeah, of course, identity and reputation NFTs. So this is where privacy becomes a key feature and not a limitation. And yeah, here IDs could be issued as as shielded NFTs where verification happens privately, for example, through ZK proofs. The holder proves that they are verified without revealing who they are. And yeah, that's just perfect. Yeah. And so we also have brand and event NFTs, yeah, membership and access tokens, that's a thing at the moment. And I think also gaming and in-game assets will be more and more within the next time. Yeah.
Nice. You mentioned RWAs, and from speaking to a few different developers, a lot of people are interested in this. They're talking about like how can I fractionalize real estate, or how can I purchase something that's big ticket without revealing my wallet or identity. So a lot of people are talking about this RWA stuff. I'm curious, kind of how you're approaching, kind of combining the real world with the digital. If you have any kind of thoughts on that.
Yeah, so the one part is of course the digital part, and we're the minting infrastructure, as I said. So we're able to fractionalize land or an artwork or so. Like we mint it as an NFT, but the real world linkage is always a certificate and a storage provider and someone who gives security about it. Like for example, our gold with finest investments. We sell gold as tokens, but the physical asset, the gold, is stored in a vault in Munich. And so when the token is traded, the physical gold is still stored. You can claim it, you can trade the token on its gold value, you own the asset, but it's still in a vault, yeah. And so you always need a kind of insurer. I don't know if it's the correct English word, but you need someone who ensures that the asset is actually there and is secured and is claimable or generates the value for the revenue of the token.
It's interesting to understand in a decentralized world where everything sits, from like the storage to the transaction data to the real world assets. And I think over time I'll work on more content to place these things so that anyone who's kind of new to the industry understands where it's at. But RWAs is a huge subject, and people realize, yes, I have to work with a third party authenticator or someone who's actually handling the assets. So if we have like a use case, I mean like a case study on that that we can share with the community, I think that'd be super insightful for any developers looking to get into RWAs.
Yeah, sure. I can send you some. We minted diamonds. We've minted gold tokens, silver tokens. Yeah.
I guess the diamond ones are one of the permanent storage, right? That's the forever thing you might need
That's
AR.io for.
yeah, but we also had a lot of clients claiming them, so we've also sent them.
That concept of like the tokenization of real world assets though, and how we manage this on chain is really, really interesting. That I thought that demo was great, Florian. I've seen a lot of NFT platforms and a lot of token platforms, and that looked really nice and clean. I think you've done a great job.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. So Flo, what can the community look forward to for NMaker going forward?
Yeah, first of all, I think the broader chain support. We are waiting to integrate Midnight, and so we're expanding from a strong foundation from Cardano, yeah, to multi-chain minting further, and yeah, bring more layers to the NMaker ecosystem, and also for the storage providers in that case. And yeah, on the user side, we're working on more no-code features, on streamlined onboarding, and we're always working on improving our API, of course. So yeah, we're moving forward toward a scalable RWA tokenization frameworks to integrated compliance tools, custom marketplace solutions. Yeah.
Sounds like there's a lot coming, a lot for the community
There,
to be excited about,
there's a lot
especially with
going
privacy.
on.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Now, we touched on at the beginning of the talk the infrastructure, how to put yourself on AR.io, get it onto Arweave. And then with Flow, we kind of covered a Minter platform, what a front end user interface can look like, what you can potentially sell to customers, have people come on and run a real business. Now, I'd like to switch over to kind of a quick example. I'll go over some of our dApp resources, what I did with AR.io, and then show you a quick, simple smart contract. I think we have enough time to run through it, so I'll go through that now. I should be sharing my screen, so can we pull up this AR.io? Okay, cool. So the first thing I did while I was working on my project was try to figure out what's the easiest way to show you an example of this. And the easiest way for me It's just kind of manually uploading content up to AR drive, then pulling in that content into my smart contracts. You can use something like Turbo, but for now, I just used the
Jay, do you
platform.
want
Give me
to
one second.
zoom in a little? There you go.
Yep. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's why I just paused for a second because I was trying to zoom, but yeah. So you can see my platform here. This is the assets that I've uploaded. Now let's take a look at this first one here. So I like AR Drive because you can just kind of click, upload, and then you can upload your images and then start referencing them. And once you've uploaded them, they're available on Arweave. Now, the important part when you're developing your applications is to understand the metadata that's associated with it. Because no matter what provider you're using, you're going to go through the metadata. So let's look at this here. We've uploaded this image. It's called midnight.png. And if you look through the details on this side of the screen, let me see. I think I may, okay. There's like a mini scroll bar on the side.
Might have to zoom out a little bit again.
Yeah, because of the zooming and stuff. But here's your metadata transaction ID, right? So we uploaded this image, it posted to Arweave, and we can see the metadata here. Now, earlier in the talk, Kep mentioned that there's this concept of gateways, and that's the way you actually see the content that's available on here. Because if you just copy that ID, and let's say you paste it into your browser, it's nothing but an ID. We have no idea what to do with this. But what you can do is pull up a provider, a gateway, like arweave.net, enter your ID here, and then you can see the metadata that's associated with it. So let's make this a bit prettier.
We're still on our drive, just FYI.
Oh, give you 1 second.
No worries.
Okay, you should be able to see this here now.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So we have our name, right? We have all the content that's associated with the image. And this is how you're going to reference all the data that's associated with your NFT. You're pulling in the object and you're referencing its name, things like your data transaction ID. And this is where your image is actually stored. So if we go again, open up the gateway and add in this ID here, you can see the actual image I uploaded. So whenever you want to pull it into your application, this is what you're going to be referencing. And then you just append it with kind of the URL, the gateway that you want to use so that you can render the image in your application.
And you'll get the same data back from every gateway in the network. So if you go to like arweave.net/transaction ID or any other of the 600 gateways, you always get that same data back.
Exactly. Yeah, that's actually a great point. Sometimes, I'm working with this all the time, so I don't think about those kind of things, but it's good to point that out. So yeah, we have our transaction ID, and I realized I didn't, since I'm like toggling windows, I didn't share this, but I'll share it here. So I basically just copied over that ID, pasted it in here, and then you can see the image rendering in your browser. So if we go back to AR Drive, you can see that it's the same image here, and that's how you actually reference it. Now, if you just want to look at the image itself, you can always just grab it here from your data transaction ID and pull that in.
Jay, did you get our Drive to create the manifest for you automatically, or did you create it yourself?
I just did it automatically.
Yeah, nice. Okay, cool.
Okay, so that's my content, uploading it. If you want to check this out and upload your own content, you can go to AR Drive and get started pretty easily. The first upload was free. I think after that I had to pay for, but the convenient thing is it takes like credit card transactions, right? So you don't even have to have money in your wallet to start doing this.
Yeah, it'll do credit card and it'll do a bunch of different tokens as well. Maybe midnight soon. I mean, there's one other cool thing about our Drive is the app itself is hosted on Arweave. So like the app itself is permanent. So like if our team disappear for whatever reason, then you can still log into this app and use it for as long as Arweave exists, which we think is quite cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. I feel like we definitely need to talk to different teams about how to do that.
For sure.
Okay, cool. So we have our image uploaded. Now let's get into our contracts. Now, what I thought was the easiest way to do this is to extend existing contracts. We have 2 libraries that are available for all developers. If you're new to our community, you can access them here. So I just pulled up our repo for our awesome dApps. If you scroll down to getting started and smart contract primitives, you can view our smart contracts here. I highly recommend looking at NFT smart contract library because there's a module here where you can pull in all the circuits that you need for your NFTs. And we also have another one for OpenZeppelin where you can pull in circuits for a fungible token, a non-fungible token, and a multi-token contract. So in a couple of other talks, I've gone over this NFT smart contract library and the Midnight Kitties. So I figured for this one, I'd go over the OpenZeppelin contracts and extending those. So let me open up my editor and then I'll switch to my editor. Give me 1 sec to close this out. Okay. Before I get into my contract, let's briefly go over what I did when I was looking at OpenZeppelin's contracts and what I needed. So I'll start sharing this tab here. If you go to the actual OpenZeppelin repository, you look through the contracts, you'll see we have those 3 contracts, the non-fungible token, multi-token, and the fungible token. So the one I was interested in showing you all is the non-fungible token because it's the easiest implementation. It's just kind of one asset. So my first thought was, what do I need to initialize this contract, right? So if we're going through the contract, I know that whenever to initialize it, it is asking for a name to associate with that NFT collection and then a symbol for that collection. So we're passing in the name and we're passing in the symbol and it's generating the actual contract. So we know that whenever we instantiate our contract, initialize it, we have to pass this information in. So this is crucial for your contract. Now, the other thing I thought is, what do I want to actually do with this contract? I want to mint, right? So let's search for some mint functions to understand how this works. So if we look at the mint here, what it's doing is it's taking in my wallet address. In this case, it could also take in a contract address, but it's just going to tell you, hey, we don't really want to use contract addresses. You want to use your key, your wallet address. So it's taking in your wallet and it's taking in the token ID, and then it's generating your mint. Now, all this is doing is just kind of documenting the wallet addresses and the token IDs that are associated with it during this mint. But as you're going through this, and some developers have reached out like, hey, how do I use this? How do I do this? You may realize that your mint function isn't actually generating the token ID. It's taking it in, but it's not generating it. So to generate it, I'll show you briefly how I do that in my own smart contract next. But we know we have a mint. And the other thing that I know mostly from experience, but you'll get used to this, is that when we were looking at AR Drive and we're looking at the metadata that's there, or we're looking at IPFS, we need to take that ID that we showed and we need to put it into our contract in some sort of way. So generally, that's referred to as your token URI. So if you look at ar.drive, you'll see, let me actually zoom in. I realize it's pretty small. So yeah, if you look at AR Drive, you'll see that the transactions is like data transaction ID. On IPFS, it's like CID. But essentially, you're looking for the same thing, which is your token URIs. And what this is doing is we have a ledger with a spot for your token URIs and your ID for your content. So we're documenting the token ID and your ID for your content here. Now for token URIs, you're going to want to read it. So we have a function here to read the actual token URI. It asks what is the token ID that you want to look up. Are you the owner of this token ID? If you are, then I will reveal to you what the CID is, or the data ID. So that's how you read. But what we mostly care about is setting the token ID, because we're going to have a user upload the content, upload metadata, upload images. So we're going to have to set this URI, and we're taking in again your token ID, your token URI, initializing it, making sure you're the owner. And if that is the case, then we are inserting into our ledger a new token ID and a new token URI. So those are the core methods, functions that I need, circuits that I need for my smart contract. So the rest I kind of left out for the time being. Now I'm going to switch over to my contract. I'll start sharing my screen here. And I'll switch over to my editor. Sorry, give me 1 second. There it goes. Okay. You should be able to see the screen load in a sec. Great. Let me zoom in here. It looks tiny on the monitor. Still looks tiny. Okay, I think that's a bit better. So if you're going through the OpenZeppelin contracts, look at the installation on how to import the module. Once you get that done and you follow their instructions to import it, you're going to want to reference the contract you want to pull in this way. So you have your imports. Let me see if I can get it to wrap. Oh. All right, I forgot the shortcut keys for it, but there's a way to wrap this. But essentially, this is following the same instructions that you have on your OpenZeppelin README to pull in the actual contract. So I pull in the contract, and then as I mentioned earlier, we need to understand like what do we need to provide the contract in order to initialize it. So as we saw earlier, we have to pass in our name, then we have to pass in the symbol. What is the name of the contract? What is the symbol? And then once we pass that in, we're actually calling the initialize circuit within that contract, and we're passing in that name and that symbol. Now, earlier I mentioned that if you look at our mint circuits, they don't actually explain how you're generating a token ID or how to pass it in. And in some cases, the token ID could be 0, 1, 2, or it could be a hash value where it's just a series of numbers and letters and you don't know what it is. So it's important to identify how you're going to generate your token and making sure that your data types align with the token you're generating and the circuits that you're trying to interact with. So in this case, I am just using a counter. So as people are minting the token, it starts from 0, goes to 1, goes to 2, and it ensures that there is no overlap. So a new user comes in, they try to deploy a mint, starts with 0 again, there's some issues there. So this is our basically global counter for our tokens in our contract. And then our mint function is super simple. All it's doing is it's taking in our wallet address, and then it's taking in the image URI, which I manually uploaded to AR Drive. Then once it takes that in, it's saying, all right, let's look at what the current state of the ledger is, the token counter, which is here. Let's read that value, and then let's assign it to ID. And then when we mint our token, we're passing in our ID for the token ID, and then we're passing in our wallet. So that's how we mint the actual token that documents the ID in my wallet. And now for the set token URI, we're passing in the ID here, and then we're passing in the image URI that we generated on AR Drive. Once you're done with this circuit, then we increment the counter to say, all right, token 0 is accounted for. It has some data associated with it. We can move on to the next token. People will have different ways on how to approach this, but I figured this was the easiest way to do it. And then the rest are just kind of basic read functions on reading the data that's on chain. So this compiles. I ran it earlier. I'll show you right here. So standard, just compiling. I wrote the deploy scripts using our getting started. So if you're not familiar with how to deploy applications on Midnight, definitely go through the getting started. It'll help you get through all of this. So let me build this now. It'll build the contract, and then I want to deploy it. I made some slight changes to my deploy script. So if you're looking through the repo later and you notice some differences, I'll point them out. But I'm using a similar interaction that we've had in our other contracts where it's asking you to add your wallet seed. I'm going to pull it now. This is my developer wallet, so please don't take my testnet funds. I'll put that in there. All right, so it's loading my wallet, saying, all right, is there any funds here? It's checking for funds. Once the funds are available, it's in the wallet, which it's already funded. It'll just load. Then it'll start opening the contract interface. And the first thing is just kind of generating the contract. That was my first test to see if I can actually deploy the contract with a static name of Midnight and the index of MM. It may take a little bit just because there's like a lot going on between the stream, between me running Docker in the background and all this other stuff. Did someone want to say something? I hear someone.
I was going to say, it's really interesting seeing this language for the first time, Jay. I've never seen it before. I'm guessing Florian's seen it, but I hadn't actually laid eyes on it. It's really, really interesting watching you go through it.
Yeah, it's been interesting for all of us. I mean, it's actively being developed, created, right? So it's been interesting to watch it kind of blossom. But yeah, essentially, I would kind of deploy my contract. Let me actually look at my deploy script here so that we can go over the slight changes I made. Where on the deployments, I realized that we're not giving you the transaction hash. So here I've identified the transaction hash and I'm publishing it so that you can look up your contracts and make sure that you actually publish them. Looks like it's still syncing. I'll check back on that later. But once that has been processed, you'll see something that says it's been deployed. You'll see the contract address return and the transaction hash. I appended with OX so that you can look it up and see what data is being published to the network. And then after that, we're saving kind of the contract address, the transaction hash in this deployment file so that you can always look back at the contract. And I built my CLI, my interface, to reference this contract. If you want to just pull it back up again, since you deployed it, you can pull it back up and reuse it. Let me try to run this again because it usually doesn't take that long, so maybe something stalled.
It's the live demo gods, Joe.
Yeah, it's always like that. A million things open to. Okay, yeah, this looks better. Yeah, I saw something else that looked odd, but now this countdown is what's expected. So you'll see it'll load my wallet. It'll show there's funds in it, and then it'll go into the interface to deploy my contract. And many of you seen that before. I just wanted to go over kind of how to deploy, make sure it works, and then I'll show you my CLI after because it includes a little bit more details about your image URI. All right, so my wallet is funded. You can see I have, well, I guess without context, this looks like a lot of money. So I have a lot of money in here. I'm loading my contract, setting up the providers, deploying my contract. Takes 30 to 60 seconds. I think I need like a spinner or something here to load just to give you like a user feedback. But after a little bit, it'll deploy. It'll give me the contract address and then the transaction hash. And I've been using kind of some of our explorers from our devs actually to test some of this out. So we see our contracts deployed. Here's our contract address. This is our transaction hash. I'll show you after actually. But you can basically just take this transaction hash, paste it into an explorer, and then you can see the transaction process and verify that it was successful. I'll switch to my Windows after. Okay, so that is my deploy, and let's run the CLI really quick. So I figured out how to deploy kind of my contract. That's basically default, and now I want to give people options to customize that contract. So let me pull up my wallet again. We should probably turn this into like a utility file since it's being referenced a couple of times between like CLIs and our deploy scripts, but we'll work on that later. If you have any feedback, by the way, as you're going through our docs, tutorials, let us know. We're always looking to update. So it's doing the same thing. It's kind of pulling up my wallet. It's seeing if it's funded. I didn't provide as much feedback here, but I'll work on that later. So once that's done, it'll go through the rest of my commands for our CLI. There it goes. So it's asking, do I want to create a new contract or pull up an existing one or join a new one by pasting it in? So let's join the one that we just created. Remember, it was deployed and saved to my deployment.json. So let's pull that contract up. And now we can mint it with the default URI. So let's look at our CLI. And the default that we're setting is here. So we're setting it to Midnight Minter and the symbol to MM. And then once we're ready, we're passing that over to our contract, right? We're including our providers, our contract, and then our custom name and symbol. So this is going to be the same kind of no matter what. And I realized this as I was building my contract that either you're passing it in here and setting the variables, then passing it in, or you're taking a user input and then you're passing in the same exact thing over to here. All right, let's see. So that's my CLI. Let me see, where's my Windows? Give me 1 second. For some reason it disappeared, but all right. So I have my mints either with default, it'll mint it with the default name and the default symbol. So that's processing a transaction, same thing. It'll generate the transaction hash that you can copy and paste into an explorer to verify that's being done. I'll do that in a little bit just to show you that. But it's basically just publishing the NFT contract with this name and this symbol here. The other option, once, let me see, let me actually just get into that because we're kind of short on time. But the other option is for you to either change that name and the symbol, or for you to pass your own custom URI. So it's loading my wallet again. Let me briefly go over to AR.drive. I'm just grabbing my data transaction ID that I showed you earlier. Okay, we're waiting for funds. It'll load the contract. And when it tries to mint by the default image URI, it's basically just pulling in this default image. If we look for this default image, that's me basically manually entering in the ID that was generated from AR Drive when I created that. So I'm just putting in the ID here, and then it's passing this over to my custom mint function that takes in the token URI. So let's go to our mint function. So that's here, and it's taking in my contract, my wallet, and then the image URI that I'm passing. So as I mentioned, if it's default, it's just kind of pulling this in. But then if it's a user interface, if it's user generated, then we have to request it from them, then pass it into here so that we can submit it to our contract. So let's look at this here. Let's join our existing. All right, let's do a mint with a custom. We're going to give it the URI, right? So let's say I have another image on AR.drive. I can pull up that transaction ID, which I actually do. So I'll paste that in here. And then it sends that over to our contract to mint an NFT with this URI. So this is going to take another 30 to 60 seconds. It'll generate a transaction hash, and then we can verify that. Let's give it a second to process because I want to show you the verification piece. But I think while I'm doing that, I can look at some questions inside. So it's normal. I was showing you multiple different scripts that I am deploying and showing. So like I mentioned, you would just want to load your wallet once and then do whatever you want with that wallet. So no, it's not typically normal for you to be adding the wallet address multiple times. But I'm breaking this into separate different modules that exist as their own like pieces of content. So that's why I'm doing it this way. But we have our transaction hash here. Let me stop sharing here so I can show you on my browser. And this was an Explorer that was actually sent in our forum. So yes, we are monitoring the forum conversations. We are seeing what you're saying. And one of our community members submitted this to our forum. So I figured, why not use it for testing? Give me 1 second to share the screen. All right. So this is, I should be sharing, give it 1 sec to load. Cool. So this is one of the explorers that was submitted by our community. You can take that transaction ID that we just generated, enter it here, and then you can review the details with your transaction. So that is the most basic way you can upload content to AR Drive to a decentralized storage and then reference that ID for that content within your smart contract and then publish a record of that combining between your token IDs, the wallet that owns it, and the actual content on chain. So that was the simplest example. Over the next week or two, I'll be working through different modules that shows you one where you're minting something static with a static contract, static image, static metadata. And then each iteration, you'll be doing something more where, let's say the image is, the collection is static, but then your individual NFT, you can customize the metadata. So I'll be showing you step-by-step how to improve on these things, but that's kind of the show for today. So I'll pause there. Do you have any questions, commentary from anyone? I guess from Kemp and Flo first.
I thought it was a really good demo. I always think you're very brave to do a live demo, to be honest. It's always a bit scary. But yeah, it's nice to see that whole flow. I've not seen Midnight kind of in action before at the code level. So like kind of it started to click in my brain. Yeah, I think it was really good.
Thanks. I'm always terrified as well, mostly because of like hardware failure or something like that. But yeah. And Flo?
Yeah, 100%. Thanks for the demo. I've also not seen the Midnight in that action you showed. Yeah, but I understood what you were showing, and I really like it.
It's cool that you guys have OpenSea standard contracts as well. I think that will give developers a lot of confidence. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've been working with OpenZeppelin. You know, they
That's what I
wrote
meant.
those.
Sorry.
Yeah, those contracts. So yeah, we're following kind of standards that they set across different networks, and I think we're going to have a lot of great standards on our network. So we're reaching the end of this, so I have to kind of skim through community updates. But the summit is next week, so I hope to see you all. I hope you're all as excited as I am to be there and to participate in the hackathon. For hackers who are participating, this is your last chance to form teams. If you are not on a team yet, just be aware that you have to have someone in person at the hackathon. So if you're still forming a team, make sure you connect with someone who's going to be at the actual conference to submit your projects. Kemp and Flo, any last words for the community before I go through Q&A?
Only to say that, like, if anyone's interested in storing permanent data or hosting like permanent unruggable websites, whether that be with NFTs or kind of anything else, then like my DMs are always open. It's I think I've been tagged in the post, but yeah, just feel free to reach out, ask any questions that you want. I like nerding out about technology. I could do it all day.
I feel like I have to reach out to you for content on like each one of these services. Like name services are like a whole thing alone. You know, the storage is one thing alone for privacy and stuff. So we'll definitely be in contact more.
I think I need to smooth out my demo. Florian's demo with the screen on board, I think, was a bit cleaner going through. I think I need to work on it to make it easier for folks to digest.
Nice. And Flo, any last words for the community?
Yeah, if you have any questions for minting NFTs, if you want to mint your own tokens on any chain, what you've seen, yeah, you can find my contact on the NMKR homepage.
Awesome. And just going through some last questions. I didn't see the contract. I keep missing that part. So when I pulled it up the second time, it was in the deployment.json file. So you can take a look at that. But our other contracts, actually our getting started contract, I believe also stores the contract the same way. So if you want to see one of our repos that demonstrates that, you can take a look at that repo there. Let me see. So I deployed certified. I was worried to try any more than that. Okay, just general comments. Let me see. All right. Someone looks like they were following along and they got it right. So that's good. And I saw one earlier for you, Kemp. Let me see.
In the comments?
Yeah. So Kemp, this is something I have built into my thesis. I've tried so many in the past, but using the Midnight MCP has opened my eyes to other better options. I am so going to try this. Okay, so seems like he's just mostly excited to try out your tools. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say Midnight has like an MCP that folks can use in their development workflow. That's cool.
There's a few community ones that are shared out there. We're kind of testing a few of them out, going back and forth. But our docs do have Kappa.ai installed, so you could talk to the docs. And in our server, if you have any questions, we also have a channel dedicated to that where you can get some AI help. If the AI is not kind of answering your questions, we have a dev chat you can ask questions in, and we'll follow up there. I don't see anything that's sticking out for either of us. So I want to thank everyone for coming to the talk today. I thought it was really cool. We went through some infrastructure stuff, how to build front-end application and demonstrate like what that can look like in the future. I'm excited to have you all as part of our ecosystem partners. And I am excited to just see what we build over the next coming year. All right. So I want to thank everyone for joining, and I hope you all have a great day. I'll see you later.
Thanks, Jay. See you, everyone.